Hey everybody, this is Mrs. Alcala from Cy Ranch High School, and today I want you to work on factoring. So factoring can be pretty straightforward. Sometimes it can be complicated. So let's start with the problem, see how much you remember with factoring. So if we had x squared plus 7x plus 12, how would you factor that? Well, you first want to notice that we just have a 1 coefficient right here. When that's the case, this is actually pretty straightforward. There's lots of ways of showing this. You may have learned a slightly different way, but the end result's the same. You're looking for factors of the last term. Okay, so we're looking for factors of 12. It's going to go up here that are going to add up to the middle term. So what two numbers multiply to give you 12 that add up to get you 7? So you want to look at all the different possibilities. We can have 6 and 2. Well, 6 and 2 don't add up to 7. So how about 3 times 4? So 3 times 4 multiply to give you 12, and they add up to give you 7. So that's what we're looking for. Once you have those factors, you basically just plug everything in to parentheses. So my x, basically x times x is what gives me x squared. And then I just take these two numbers, including their signs, and I plug them in here. Doesn't matter if I put the 4 first or the 3 first. That's it. So I usually have students ask me, well, what happened to the 7x? Well, where that went is basically when you multiply the outside 2, that's 4x, and the inside 2, that's 3x. Well, guess what? When you add those up, that's where your 7x is. It's kind of hidden. So that's how you can kind of check to see if you did it right. So that one's all done. Okay, let's try another one with just a 1 coefficient. Let's try the color here. So let's say this time we had x squared minus x minus 30. Okay, so I want you to try to do it along with me. So remember what I did above is I put my little crisscross on there. You guys who are good with numbers, you may not need to have to do this, but it's a good way to organize all your numbers. We're going to look for factors of the last term. So factors of negative 30 that give us negative 1. When you don't see a number, there's a 1 assumed to be there. So what times what gives you 30? Well, let's see, we got 3 times 10, we've got 2 times 15, let's see, we've got, I don't know, 5 times 6. There we go. Because if I added or subtracted any of these, we wouldn't get 1. Only if I used 5 and 6. So if I take 5 and 6, now I need to get a negative 1 when I add these together. Well, if that's the case, then the 6 has to be negative. Negative 6 and positive 5 is negative 1. Negative 6 times positive 5 is negative 30. Okay, so if you tried any of these other combinations, they wouldn't work. So you have to double check that. That's the hard part. Now we have that, we can go ahead and plug straight into our parentheses. And again, it doesn't matter which spot the negative 6 goes and which spot the 5 goes. And that one's done. Okay, so that's not so bad. Let's go ahead now and move on. This time we're going to go do a problem that's a little bit more complicated. 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. So what makes this one a little more complicated is the fact that we now have a coefficient here other than 1. So here at Cy Ranch, we started to do slide and divide. I know not every school does this, but we're going to be using this method all the way up through pre-cal and calculus. So it's good to learn it now. And to slide and divide, we're going to take this 3 and slide it over to the last term, and we're going to multiply. So you notice 3 is gone. The 7x doesn't change, but now 3 times 2 is 6. Now, I can't just leave it like that. I'm going to have to go back and undo what I did here. You can't change this whole expression and not undo what you did. So we'll take care of that later, though. Okay, so now we're going to go back to what we did on the last slide where we looked for factors of 6. Remember the last term? That goes up here. Factors of 6 that give us 7, which is the middle term. Okay, so hopefully you can see that pretty well. That's just 6 times 1. Can't be 2 and 3. That's going to add up to 5. So it's got to be 6 times 1. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and plug it in. So x plus 6, x plus 1. Those two numbers right there. That's where I got those. Okay, but I'm not done. I have to go back and undo multiplying by 3. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? It's dividing by 3. I'm only going to divide these last two numbers by 3. Clean it up a little bit. That's going to give me 2. 6 divided by 3. And this number, it doesn't divide, so we're going to bring it up here in front of the x and leave the 1 alone. There you go. You're done. So one more time, I slid the 3 over, multiply the last term. I factored it just like I showed you on the last slide, and then I went back and divided by whatever I multiplied up here. Okay, you got that? There we go. Let's try one more like that. Okay, over here. So the next one's going to be 6x squared. Excuse. All right, sorry about that. A little interruption. Anyway, so we were at 6x squared minus 17x plus 5. And you're going to notice we have a coefficient other than 1, so we're going to slide and divide. X squared minus 17x plus 30. And now we're going to look for factors of 30 that give us negative 17. I'll come down here. Factors of 30 that give us negative 17. So you may need to think about that for a minute. Go off to the side. And anything that ends in a 0, I tend to go ahead and do 10 times whatever. So 10 times 3, that's not going to get us 17. How about 2 times 15 would get us 30. And adding us would give us positive 17. So to get the negative, we're going to have to make both of those negative. So multiplying those gives us positive 30. Adding them gives us negative 17. So we get x minus 2 times x minus 15. Now remember, we got to go back and undo what we did before. So we're going to have to go back and divide by 6. Now we want to reduce that. So 2, 6 is the same as 1/3. And 15 over 6, we can divide both of those by 3. So that would give us 5/2. Finally, this comes up to the front, this comes up to the front, and we're all done. 3x minus 1, 2x minus 5. All right, now, last thing I want to show you real quickly is when they ask you to solve an equation instead of factor, you have to actually finish the problem. So the previous problem we just did, 2x minus 5, 3x minus 1. So when they ask us to solve it, they'll have an equals there somewhere. Okay, so say it's equal to 0. What you do then is you take each one of these individually and you set them equal to 0 and you solve it. So we're going to add 5 to both sides and we'll get 2x equals 5. Divide by 2 and there's one solution. Come over here, do the same thing. 3x equals 1. Divide by 3 and there's our second solution. Okay, so 5/2, 1/3. X can be both of those. I shouldn't have written that as a, let me go back and erase that. That shouldn't be written as a coordinate point, my mistake. Okay, so we're just going to have x equals 5/2, which you can make 2.5. X equals 1/3. Okay, so do that anytime it says to solve. Okay, so set them equal to 0 and solve each one of those. All right, so hopefully that got you ready to go for solving equations, and make sure you practice that because you'll be using that a lot. All right, guys. Bye.